Yo, what is up you guys? It's K8 here, and today I'm going to show you guys how to make this patch from my new Spire Bank that should be out by the end of the week. So it's kind of a Growl kind of bassy sort of thing, so let's listen to that. So I just played you a clip and I held down one note at the very end so you could get an idea of how this acts differently according to the note length and all that kind of stuff. So what I'll do now is I'll throw up the patch for you guys to just go ahead and copy and pause the video and just get it all down, and we'll make a new one together where I'll go in depth with some of the different things I'll do. So we're going to make a different one, by the way. We're not going to try to make this one again, but we're going to use a lot of the same techniques. So go ahead, pause, and follow all that stuff, and then we'll make a new one together. Alright, so let's go ahead now and go to initialize patch. So let's just go down into the next thing. Let's just click initialize just for fun. And let's just set up some of the things we'll want. So we're going to want this to be in mono mode. We're going to want maybe boost to be off. We're going to use our EQ. So we're going to take our low shelf, pull that frequency all the way down, pull level down with it. So if we need to control the low end, we have this ready to go. So I just leave it all the way down for now, all the way to the left. And let's go ahead and break a little bit of the high side up, just a bit. And let's actually set our EQ for the mid. So this is going to be the one that really kind of shines and focuses kind of wherever our sound is most interesting at in the mids. So I know I'm setting some EQs before we've heard anything, but that's just kind of what I like to do. I'd like to have this stuff ready to go when I need to tweak it. So let's also turn off things we're not going to use, like delay and reverb. We're not going to really use. Chorus is a maybe, but we're going to turn it off for now because I don't plan on using it. Let's also look at our envelope 3, stepper 1, and we're going to do a lot of things in the matrix. So we're going to want to start throwing some of that stuff like stepper, envelope 2, and we could possibly do a stepper 1 and envelope 2 combo. So now we just have to add in all those things. So let's go ahead and add in our oscillator amp 1 and amp 2. So that way we can just sort of have our stepper be ready for all this stuff. So let's go ahead and just bring that one up. And this is what I do for all these patches, by the way. So maybe it's because I'm designing one after another that I kind of know the things I want. So I just set those things up so it's quick to kind of shape the patch into whatever it's going to be. And so let's turn off oscillator 3 and 4, bring up our pitch bend range. Not that I think we'll use it with a patch like this, but I definitely like to just have that there just so it's consistent with all the presets and stuff that I make. And I turned off drift because that's kind of like a pitch variation thing that I'm not exactly sure that I'll want. And we don't really need to set glide. So now we kind of have what I call my initialize patch. So even though we started with an initialize patch, this is really where I like to start from. Let's go ahead and start with oscillator 1. Let's just hear it the way it sounds right now. Let's bring up our main volume real quick. Let's bring up a little bit of X comp. We'll leave it right around there. We'll probably want more of it later, but again, we have to do this when we actually have more things to hear from the patch. And let's pull this down all the way into the yellow. So the yellow is kind of like the in-between on and off position, so you can still set this pretty much all the way down and assign some modulation to it and it'll still work, because if it was in the red like that, that kind of means it's off. And if it's here, we have a little bit of volume, so we want it in the yellow, especially where we're going to add things like steppers to our oscillator 1 amp. So we already have that set up. And let's go ahead and bring this down 2 octaves because I'm playing a pretty low note. And let's set our stepper, and then we'll set our oscillator. I think we're ready to just kind of tweak a little bit more of our first FM oscillator, or our only FM oscillator, because I plan on using an AM sync in combination with one FM oscillator. So let's add two voices. Let's kind of hear what that does, and then let's kind of adjust some of this. So I do want to get into playing with the control A and control B amounts. So usually I like to put my control B all the way down, and so let's listen. So what I think would be interesting now is to kind of start adding some modulations to control A and control B, so we can hear how that will kind of affect the sound at this point. So let's go back to our matrix. We have an envelope 2 that's already kind of here, so let's take our oscillator 1, control A and control B. Let's put those somewhere. And we could also do that. We could maybe change this stepper into an LFO and take this off. So we might end up using an LFO. I'm not sure if I used an LFO in the previous patch I showed you at the very beginning, but I think it's worth having because LFOs are awesome. So let's go ahead and put control A, control B, maybe our wave table mix. So right now I'm kind of doing what I usually do, where I just add a lot of things to modulate, and if they work I keep it, if they don't I take them off and find something else that I could better modulate. So let's kind of bring some of these things up a bit. So I'm just kind of randomly putting amounts on these, and now it's time to just tweak the envelope 2. So I want something with a bit of attack and a bit of decay. So that's usually what I like my envelope 2 or my first envelope that I set to be. I like something that kind of comes in more gradually. So definitely with growls, they kind of have a lot of attack, and it doesn't always seem that obvious, but they do have not exactly sharp attacks, and that's kind of where that big wah, that opening sound comes from. Just slow attacks, slow LFOs, slow steppers. That's just the wah. Because if it was sharp and it had a quick attack, it would just be like, it would sound more like a pluck or something like that, where it's just like click, 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 which we don't want. So let's kind of set that. Let's listen and adjust some of our envelope settings now that we've put our envelope 2 kind of the way we want. And then I actually meant some of our modulation settings. So let's play that. Alright, and let's start adding in some effects and some of our filtering, because that's a big part of this. More than the oscillators itself, it's a lot of the modulation that you do. So there's just a lot of modulation happening here. And let's go ahead and bring in our shaper. So let's just pull everything up all the way. Let's bring in some interesting things here. So let's try to get our shaper low cut and our shaper. Let's see, I think that's all I want from shaper actually. So I like to play around with the low cut because that's the most noticeable thing to modulate. You get that low frequency distortion kind of variation that it just changes a lot of the characteristics, and especially if you apply modulations like envelopes and LFOs to it, it sounds really neat. So let's go ahead and listen to that. Alright, so we kind of have that in a nice spot. I kind of, like I said, I always know where I'm going with this because I keep making a bunch of these patches. So right now, if it's hard to tell where I'm going with this, just, hang on. I know where I'm going with this. And let's start making this sound a little bit more valley, a little bit more growly. So we have our phaser to thank for that, and our EQ, and we'll also add in a filter peak, so that way we can apply some modulation to our peak, so we get that kind of that sweep in the sound that usually happens with external processing with EQs. So let's go ahead and listen to that. So we have a bit more of a growl characteristic now, so I think what would be cool is to now play around with the frequency and feedback of our phaser by modulating it. So let's see, what are some of the things I could take off here? So I don't actually want to use an LFO anymore. I haven't touched one yet, so let's just leave that away. Let's take off some of this stuff. Let's take now our phaser, frequency, and feedback, and let's play around with that with the envelope too. We could also add the stepper in here as well, so now we have two things affecting that. And let's just adjust that, so let's see where it sounds good. There's one final thing I think in terms of like effects and filters and modulation that I can add now, which is the combo filter, which is a really odd type of filter, but it kind of works in the weirdest cases. So I think if you listen, you'll get the idea. And we're gonna want a lot of reso on this, and we're just gonna really want to modulate our cutoff one as well now. So let's listen to that. Alright, so I think this patch still needs a lot of tweaking and all that stuff, but if I do that, that's gonna take like honestly the tweaking and just making everything sound really nice. That's, you know, an extra like 20 or 15 minutes of like just playing around with things. But essentially the patch is roughly like 90% there. It's just the 10% of detailing and kind of perfecting things. So I gave you the first patch so you could see how that one is all done and all that, and this one was just to kind of show you some of the techniques and, you know, how it affects the sound as you're adding it all in. So thanks guys for watching, and of course